Sauce Nation. Just went for a run, and it was kind of uninspired, but that's okay. I showed up, and that's all that matters. But I just read a quote on my feed from Jim Hall, and it said something to the effect of the space between the notes you play is as important as the notes you play, which I've heard in one way or another before, and I'd say it's true. Like good phrasing, whether you're playing dense music or more sparse melodies, good phrasing, that the space between your notes is equally important. So it's not just, you wouldn't take from that, play less all the time. Yngwie still has good phrasing, he plays a lot, and there's some songs that are really fast that have horrible phrasing, and some that are really dense like that have good phrasing. I think maybe Al Di Meola or something like that. And then conversely, a piece of music that might have a sparse melody may not have good phrasing. So there's more to it than just that, but I'm sure Jim was not confused. But it was nice to see him pop on my feed today. I studied with Jim Hall very briefly before I went to Berklee, and it was a really memorable lesson. And he was like one of the first people who was he really was a fan of my music, and it was very validating. It's one thing for like your mom or your friends or whomever to say that you're a good guitar player, but when you have like a legend like Jim Hall calling you and leaving these nerdy voice messages, it was like, oh, in that song where you played the C diminished and it resolves to whatever, that was really cool, man. Okay. It was really like a very wonderful feeling to have such a amazing guitar player. I mean, those albums he did with Bill Evans are just like my favorite jazz albums of all time. So he was a fan, and it was really meaningful to have that relationship with him. I studied with him briefly, and then he actually offered to write liner notes for my next album, and I remember talking to him about that. He offered, I didn't say anything about it, and I was really touched by that. And I'm like, oh, great, Jim, but it's not, I haven't even started recording yet. And he's like, oh, and there was sort of like in hindsight, I took it to be like maybe he wouldn't have the opportunity to do it if I didn't finish it in time, which ultimately was the case, unfortunately. But in my first lesson with him, we had what felt like kind of his stock lesson. I mean, even though he was a jazz legend, he still, jazz culture seems to be like one that nurtures the upcoming talent kind of more so than other cultures, perhaps like shred culture or whatever, which is maybe a little bit more competitive. But he gave me what seemed to be kind of like his standard lesson, and he really stressed dynamics. He gave me his book, we jammed, we worked on some reading stuff just to see where I was with that, and he went through this list of guitar players who he thought were great, and he talked about the qualities that made them great. So like number one on the list, in like no particular order, he was like talking about Charlie Christian and Django Reinhardt, and he talked about players who played fast, like McLaughlin played fast well, and Pat Metheny, and he talked about like the phrasing of Charlie Christian and like the style of Django and his feel. And he acknowledged Jimi Hendrix. He's like, Jimi Hendrix, rock music is not my thing. It's like too loud, not my thing at all. But he acknowledged, the artistry. I can't remember beyond that. These papers, I'm sure, are at my parents' house in like a stack of papers in like a suitcase. So it would be cool to dig that out and like do a more in-depth video on like what he said in his lesson. But the last thing he said to me was, work on your reading. You'll get into Berklee, but work on your reading. So that was the last thing he said. It was fun. I remember, and just to continue the story, he's like, all right, let's improvise. I'll solo, you solo. Like, just tell me, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to do like an A Dorian vamp. Okay, right, like A minor, all the white keys. Well, I guess if it were Dorian, it would have F sharp. But and we're just vamping on A minor 7, and I'm playing some licks and stuff, and he plays, and I play, and he plays, and then I play like this sweep arpeggio, then he plays, and he immediately plays this sweep arpeggio. I'm like, oh snap, oh man, Papa Bear. Just like let me know that he could do that or whatever. But yeah, just saw that today, and it reminded me of of my relationship, kind of like pen pals, or like, with Jim Hall for 10 years or whatever it was, and the way that relationship came up, just to close it out, is my grandfather worked on the Merv Griffith show, and Jim Hall was the guitar player on the Merv Griffith show. So these connections come out of nowhere. I could go on and on about how that goes, but my grandfather Red McMahon hooked me up with him, and it's not like they were close. My grandfather was just, this like go for it kind of, like, I dare say, obnoxious guy, just like, hey Jim, you're gonna meet my grandson, he's great, or whatever. He hadn't talked to him in 40 years. Anyway, whatever. So that's how that went, and it was great. Jim Hall is probably my favorite jazz guitarist, not just because I met him and he like had some really nice things to say about my playing, but just those albums are so great, and his playing is so tasteful, and like, and this Bill Evans and Jim Hall albums, Undercurrent in particular, Intermodulation and Undercurrent, is so cool. So, and the two of them, actually, it makes sense that that record is so great, because Bill Evans is like the piano addendum to Jim Hall, right? Like, incredible touch, incredible phrasing, and like incredible improv and mastery and great writing. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. And the fact that those two got to work on albums is, a beautiful thing. So that's my post-run rant. I'm going to take a shower, and I will see you guys later. Oh wait, what do we know? We're doing some announcements here, because if you bought the Guitar Moid Blues Pentatonic Roadmap, we're doing a live workshop included in that, on all of that material, on blues improv and chasing chords and question and answer phrasing and target note solos. So if you want to get into that live, one-time only masterclass workshop on Zoom, get that course. Also, if you bought the Cage Conversion Therapy course, we are going to be doing a live workshop stroke masterclass on that as well very soon. That will be announced very soon. So if you want to get on one or both, there is not a more valuable option in the guitar world, educational option for intermediate guitarists wanting to level up, than these Guitar Moid live workshops. So I hope to see you there. Sauce it up.